What I would like to know is the answer to a very simple question. Are we alone as conscious beings in this entire buzzing 400 billion star galaxy, one of 10 to the 10th other galaxies? It seems pretty implausible.
For the first time, we're mustering substantial, sophisticated, serious scientific searches for extraterrestrial intelligence. There's never been a time like that before. So there is some chance that in the next few decades we will get a signal from some spectacularly distant, spectacularly exotic civilization, and everything on Earth will, as a consequence, change. I think even if there's a plausible argument for a few, we ought to keep looking. I'd even go further than that. If there's a plausible argument that there isn't anybody out there, bearing in mind that we can be wrong, we ought to keep looking, because the question is of the most supreme importance. It calibrates our place in the universe. It tells us who we are. And so it is worthwhile trying to find other civilizations, I would say, no matter what.
That I think this enterprise can best be understood as a kind of exercise in the archaeology of the future. We're well aware of the archaeology of the past. We find a site, a tumulus or a ruin, and we take a spade and we dig into the ground, and if you're lucky, you discover Ur of the Chaldees or something marvelous. Now, we never thought that we could examine the same thing in reverse time, but in fact, in a way, we can. We know that it's possible that somebody who wants to do it will bring us in. Of course, it is their past, but our future, which we're investigating to some degree. Even though they're made of different chemistry, even though they've never seen our star, even though they have nothing biological in common with us, they have, if they have got radio astronomy, if they have the kind of technology we're imagining, have very much in common with us the manufacture of a culture, the development of a culture which is unmatched in all the 10 billion species or more that have come to the face of the Earth. So that's the story, and maybe the spade will turn up, luckily, a good site one day. We hope it will. It's just a question of being patient. When you got the spade and you know the future is there, it seems very wrong not to dig.
It seems possible that the Earth has been visited by various galactic civilizations many times, possibly every 10,000 years during geological time. It is not out of the question that artifacts of these visits still exist, or even that some type of base is maintained in the solar system to provide continuity for successive expeditions. Because of the weathering and possibility of detection and interference by inhabitants of Earth, it might be preferable not to erect such a base on the Earth's surface. Intelligent Life in the Universe, written by Dr. Carl Sagan and I.S. Skolowski. Interesting comments coming from scientist SETI, now called Project Phoenix, C-SETI, and a Disclosure Project. Many other organizations and individuals are seeking signs of extraterrestrial life. Well, what kind of evidence should we be looking for? Dr. Alan Tuff, a leading SETI proponent, wrote a research paper entitled How to Achieve Contact, 5 Promising Strategies. And he said the scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, is expanding its array of search strategies. This is highly appropriate change. He lists 5. 1, pursue a variety of means for searching the solar system and Earth for physical evidence of an alien object or its effects. 2, issue invitations asking ETI to have a dialogue with humankind. 3, become sufficiently prepared for contact, thus encouraging ETI to respond. And for evidence from many light years away, search for astroengineering projects and their byproducts, or, of course, radio and optical SETI. And he devotes this paper to the 5 promising strategies. We're going to zero in on several of those. The SETI field is united by its common aim of detecting irrefutable scientific evidence of genuine extraterrestrial intelligence. Search for an alien object. Strategy 1. Search the solar system and Earth for physical evidence of an alien object or its effects. A search for physical evidence could focus on the solar system or on Earth. It could focus on phenomena that are normally studied by mainstream science or on stranger anomalous phenomena. These two distinctions enable us to cluster the various search approaches into 4 categories. He lists within the solar system, search for unassailable evidence of an alien object. We're going to focus in on that because that is probably the most likely place in view of our technology that we'd find something. Alternatively, the alien object might be a building, a monument, or some other artificial structure. Indeed, an alien intelligence may have deliberately left an artifact for us to discover at some special landmark in the solar system, such as the highest point on Mars, or the deepest canyon on Venus, or in some carefully chosen spot that we will explore someday because of our scientific curiosity or our appreciation of beauty. An alien object might be a building, a monument, or some other artificial structure. Research Methodologies on Contact with ETI, written by Dr. John B. Alexander of the National Institute for Discovery Science. Serious business, contacting ETI. A lot of money, a lot of time is going into it. A space exploration device from Earth sends back a report of evidence of prior life with demonstrated intellect from a planet or moon. A very, very interesting comment. The finding of ancient ruins or artifacts on another planet or the moon would be the most likely discovery because of our technological level. It is the opinion of most SETI scientists that any contact would be made with a very old and highly technological society. Interesting to repeat it. Very old, but highly technological. If they are old or ancient, they could well have been in our solar system long before mankind even existed, and therefore ancient ruins or artifacts would be eventually discovered as we explore the other planets of our solar system. Scientists agree that Mars at one time probably had water and an atmosphere much like Earth. If this is true, that an alien culture could have set up a base on Mars for exploration and left it after their explorations were completed. The first discovery of these ruins or artifacts would then be by satellite probes of Mars, and their initial discovery would be very controversial. Hence the much argued dispute over the face on Mars and other recently presented findings of anomalies on the surface. The Brookings report said that one of the groups of mankind that would feel most threatened by the discovery of extraterrestrial artifacts would be the scientists and engineers. Hence, they would be also the most likely to mock and ridicule any such discoveries. They would then not just be skeptics, using so-called scientific reasons for rejection. They would, because of this innate fear, go to the extreme of unbelief and denial, even when presented with basically irrefutable evidence. We have already seen this in action from the scientific community. This ridicule, mocking, and denial and unbelief would be presented to the general public as scientific facts, when the real foundations for rejection were not scientific at all, but would be presented that way to cover the underlying fear. The same rejection on scientific grounds is found when ancient manuscripts which speak of visitations from the stars are rejected as absurd myths, simply because it does not interface with presently accepted norms and interpretations of our past. And that's a very important point. This basic fear that we may not be on top of the food chain in the universe underlies the general public's attitude towards UFOs, the concept of aliens and earthly visitations by them. This manifests itself as the giggle factor, or the mocking of people who claim to have been abducted or had any sightings. Because of this fear, actual advances in the research or discovery of ancient artifacts and ruins on other planets will be most assuredly be met with extreme controversy and rejection. Governments then might consider they had a valid reason for total cover-up if they discovered artifacts per the Brookings report. The Brookings Institute being a think tank and issued a report many years ago. The religious community was also singled out by the Brookings report as another group very likely to be upset over the discovery of ruins or artifacts that would prove the existence of alien life forms and intelligence. Thus, there are powerful social and political forces at work, both in the public and governments, to refute any evidence presented or attempt at least to cover it up, sweep it under the rug, so to speak. This is especially true in media, which has ridiculed, mocked, and attempted to destroy any evidence brought forth by independent sources such as Richard Hoagland, Stephen Greer, and others by only reporting on those issues brought forth by NASA, JPL, or Mail and Space Services, or the official, politically correct position of accepted science. And that's a kind of an interesting thing. The Discovery Channel recently ran a documentary called Ocean Mysteries: Fury in the Abyss.
Earth might be like Mars, a planet that is believed to have had massive seas hundreds of millions of years ago. At the University of Arizona Lunar and Planetary Laboratory, Professor Victor Baker thinks Mars may have looked like this, very similar to Earth today, with a warm climate, abundant carbon dioxide, and probably life forms.
Now, there's evidence in the northern plains for ponded water. The low parts have what appear to be sedimentary materials. There appear to be shorelines around the margin. All of those are consistent with the idea that this was covered with a body of water.
What happened? The answer lies with carbon dioxide, this white substance you see floating in the ocean. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere dissolves easily in water. There it undergoes chemical reactions that turn it into sediment that collects at the bottom of the sea. For life to flourish, the carbon dioxide needs to be recycled back into the atmosphere. Earth has a mechanism to do that. Undersea volcanoes. Along with the lava, they spew forth volcanic gas, including carbon dioxide from the Earth's core. Dr. Christopher McKay of the NASA Ames Research Center.
Well, on Earth, that carbonate will be recycled by plate tectonics carrying the material down deep under the Earth, where at high temperatures, the carbonate will turn back into carbon dioxide and come bubbling up through volcanoes. That recycling is a very important part of keeping Earth healthy. Without that recycling, Earth would not be habitable.
Those plate tectonics don't occur on Mars. There's no chain of volcanic mountain ranges like on Earth. On Mars, the atmospheric carbon dioxide decreased, reducing what we call the greenhouse effect, and the temperature dropped rapidly. The seas froze, and with water evaporation reduced, rainfall decreased. Seawater eventually seeped into the ground, finally froze, and got trapped underneath. Mars transformed into a cold, bleak planet.
If Mars was at one time a planet with water and warm temperatures, then there is every reason to believe that if Earth was in fact visited by aliens, as ancient manuscripts claim, then Mars could be visited as well, and evidence of those visits might well be found as ancient, intelligently designed structures. As most scientists agree that such a civilization would be highly advanced in both social structure and technology, we might also find evidence of such advanced technology as portrayed in Total Recall Forbidden Planet or Mission to Mars.
Don't you think whoever built this thing thought of that?
Who knows what the hell they thought? They weren't human.
Maybe it's a trap. Maybe they want a meltdown.
We don't even know if this piece of junk will work. What is it? $1 million? Half a million?
Not $500,000.
500,000 years old. Well, let's make sure we find out.
Technicians have ridden in this little vehicle. But now, Dr. Morbius, prepare your minds for a new scale of physical scientific values, gentlemen.
This is not an earthquake, Ruby.
Dear God, what is it?
It's fantastic.
And task confirms reports that similar gigantic crafts are now approaching Moscow, Leningrad, and Vladivostok. This would bring the unofficial count to at least 31.
How can it just hang there?
3 miles across.
Cairo also is reporting that its UFO is stationary now, like almost all the others, hanging in the
I still think we should leave the city.
No, the roads are...
Look. Is that what I think it is?
Yeah. It's Mars.
Hollywood imagination may be one thing, but the concepts presented agree with SETI scientists in their basic foundations. If contact is ever made, the aliens will be far more advanced than human civilization. Signs of artificial intelligence, this means forced, determined, or planned construction rather than natural, random, or accidentally produced shapes. Very, very important that we cover some of these signs. What do we look for when looking for signs of artificial structures or intelligently designed structures? What characteristics do they display that natural organic objects do not? What makes them different? We just don't think about it here on Earth. We're so used to seeing buildings and roadways. Natural objects such as rocks, hills, mountains, lakes, rivers, and streams have a meandering appearance to them following natural forces, taking the path of least resistance. Thus we do not see natural objects with repeated squares, triangles, circles, ovals, domes, centered objects, and other perfect geometric shapes. You simply just don't see them in nature on repeated patterns. Intelligently designed structures have engineered shapes to them, with lines that delineate repeated angles for walls, roofs, doorways, archways, foundations, and support with roadways for access. There is, therefore, obvious planning when you view a city, a town, or a building from aloft. Their duplicated hard forms differ from the random, natural surroundings. Now in this view, we're going to come in. You can't see anything as you come into planet Earth. What we're going to zero in on is Manhattan, and until you get very, very close, you see no signs of any artificial intelligence. But the minute you start closing in, all of a sudden the patterns begin to appear. Buildings, roadways, squares. You even have domes, arches, repeated patterns. Very, very obvious to us. The thing is, we just don't normally think about it, but that is how you determine artificial intelligence. Buildings of artificiality. They stand out like a sore thumb once you think about what it is you're looking at. But you can see the repeated angles, the square 90-degree corners, flat roofs and flat walls, etc., etc. Image context. What is the actual image context? Well, the location of Tithonia is latitude minus 4.96 south, longitude 89.62 west. It's just south of the Martian equator in the Tithonium Chasma floor area. We've got it marked as a bullseye there on Mars. As we zero in, it sits very low. And there's a very good reason probably why they picked that spot. It would be out of the way of more lethal rays from the sun. It probably had water on it at one time. It certainly looks like an inland lake was there, and that this community sits on a small island, small rise. It's an incredible colony of structures. The colony is located about 6 miles south of the center point location of the MOC 0204304 strip. It is about 2,300 feet below the surrounding Martian terrain insofar as we have been able to determine. We're not absolutely sure about the actual depth of it, but it's far, far below the surrounding territory because it lies within the chasm itself. This colony has a tremendous amount of artificial structures. They are located in about an 82-acre area. For the southern colony, there are actually 2 colonies at this location. One is about a half a mile to the north. There are all types of structures here, from hexagons to very high-tech modern arches to wall ruins, step pyramids, roadways. There appear to be tunnels. There are fairly modern buildings as well as very, very ancient walled ruins that appear to be in a very, very old state of disrepair and ruin. There are step pyramids as you find in Mexico and South America, but there are also Egyptian-style shapes that appear quite frequently. There's domed structures that appear to be like communications dome structures. It's an incredible array and a sort of an admixture of different civilizations: Egyptian, Mexican, South American, Indian, Middle Eastern architecture all play in these shapes. Some of these shapes are very, very easily discerned. Others are quite difficult to actually pick out, but once you see them, they snap out at you very readily. It's just a tremendous archaeological site. There is a 200-foot tall statue there. Has folded arms. It's coming into view now, and it's very, very much like you find in Egypt with the folded arms, feet together, like the mummy statues that you find in Egyptian culture. The first building we're going to actually look at is, we dubbed it the mining or the manufacturing plant, for lack of a better word for it. It appears to be more along those lines than anything else, but you can see it. It sits on the furthest west side of Tithonia City. You can see the ink lift coming in there to show you exactly where it is and the outline of it. And as you close in on it, it becomes more and more obvious that this has all the parameters of an artificially designed building, parallel lines that form rectangles and virtual squares. There are several flying buttresses on this building to hold up that long protrusion you see in front. You notice that the protrusion is part of the overall structure. This is an incredible building to be finding on the planet Mars. Here's an ink lift that we did of it. We were very, very careful when we traced these to trace them to exact scale as we found them on the drawing. It's about 325 feet long with the protrusion. It's about 150 feet high, 100 feet wide. The protrusion itself on front is about 75 feet tall. Here's an artist rendition of it. You'll notice that to the left of the building there appear to be what is called, almost looks like strip mining. And then the terracing is abruptly terminated by this structure. It's just an incredible structure. And no other terminology can describe it. We don't really know what it is or what it's for, but it is clearly visible. We have it portrayed as the item on top, you will notice, is dead center. We're going to reverse things and go back down, and as you see it the second time around, take a look at the structure on top of the roof of this building, and you'll see it's located in the exact center. Nature does not provide us with 90-degree corners, flat walls, flat roofs, centered objects on the roofs. Does not provide us with flying buttresses and tunnels between them or in them for pathways to go through, as can be readily seen in the pictures. You actually have to obtain the photographs themselves and really study them to get the full impact of what it is you're seeing. But this is a very, very large structure. And because there is a large tunnel behind it, we're very, very curious if this could not have been some sort of a mining facility or a manufacturing facility or of some type. And I guess there's no way to know unless you go there. But now I want you to focus not so much on the building this time around, but on the land, the natural flow of land to the left of this structure. As we back away from it, you can see the terracing much more readily, and you will notice that this building just abruptly terminates that natural flow of the land. It has been carved right into the hill to the left of it. The pathway, as you can see, goes around the building and then continues on out of the picture. There is every evidence of artificiality. This large structure fulfills every parameter used to identify artificiality or intelligent design. 1, a rectangular shape repeated in a large protrusion, except it's smaller and longer. 2, repeated flat walls. 3, repeated 90-degree angle sharp corners. 4, a flat roof with a rounded cap structure that sits in the exact center of the roof. 5, a large pathway roadway that leads up to and goes into the flying buttresses and around the structure itself. 6, large openings where one would expect to see large doors, windows, or even solar collectors. 7, this structure is totally anomalous to the immediate terrain and in fact abruptly terminates the flow of the terrain as engineering would require. And that's one of the key signatures of artificiality. 8, the presence of buttresses supports is not something natural, but is something only engineers would accomplish. These are facts that are beyond dispute. Any attempt to claim this structure is just a rock or a natural formation of some type would be an absurd beyond comprehension. Conclusion: structure number 1 is intelligently designed for purposes unknown by entities unknown. The suggestion of a mining operation or manufacturing plant is conjecture only, based upon Earth structures. The next thing we're going to look at is a shrine or observatory. We believe that it is most likely a shrine, not an observatory. We took the liberties of putting a statue in there, reminiscent of Greek culture and ancient cultures that used to put in large statues in their large buildings. But here it sits, again to the west we're looking north in these pictures. And here you see this hexagon structure snuggled right up next to what we dubbed the mining building. You can see the ink lift coming in there. And as we close in on it, it becomes very, very obvious that we are looking at a hexagon structure. You can see a stairway going right up the center. There's an arched dome that accepts the stairway, and it has an inverted V entrance into it. This is an amazing structure. Here's a close-up of it, and you can see the roadway going into all the openings. There's 2, and then the stairway. There's 2 frontal openings, and then there's the stairway, and you can see the roadway, pathway, whatever you want to call it, leads into every single one of those areas. Here's an ink lift taken direct from the picture, and we've simply closed in on it as much as possible to give you a much better idea of what it actually does look like. We feel that rather than communications or a astronomical observatory, that this is most likely a religious shrine. It's 170 feet tall by about 150 feet wide. The arched dome on top is about 95 feet high and 95 feet wide. The architecture is reminiscent of Indian and Middle Eastern architecture, and yet totally different in other respects. The closest building we could actually find would be the Dome in the Rock, and it's far, far different than that even. It's an enigma. There is no question that it is difficult to determine exactly what this building was used for or is being used for. If anybody's there now, it doesn't look like anybody is. That doesn't mean